1949. Red Chinese victory. The situation of the world is precarious in 1949. Intelligence updates on the communist uprisings taking place in China and Greece fill President Truman's desk every morning. The most distressing came on the morning of June 6th of 1949, when Mao's forces stormed and captured the major city of Shanghai, a serious defeat for the nationalist government. In response, President Truman must choose between three options on how to handle the growing Red menace. Direct intervention in the war would likely be the most successful option, but would be extremely costly in terms of men, equipment, and the ever-important poll numbers. On the other hand, leaving it to fate would almost guarantee a communist victory in China, a major national security risk and a huge blow to the president's popularity. In the end, President Truman decided to bring the issue to the United Nations, hoping that international military intervention and humanitarian aid would be the push the Republic needed to counter the PLA's increasing strength. Interestingly, the Soviet delegation voted to abstain on the measure for Chinese police action, rather than vote against it or outright veto it. Despite international intervention, it was becoming clear that communist forces would likely succeed in China. By October, nearly all of central China was under PLA rule, while the KMT desperately tried to hold the south. On November 20th, the nationalist capital of Guangzhou fell to communist forces, crushing all hopes for a sudden KMT comeback. Nationalist forces fled to the island of Formosa and into Burma, hoping to somehow organize a strong enough counterattack that would see the Republican flag fly over mainland China once more. Meanwhile, on the home front, Supreme Court Justices Frank Murphy and Wiley Rutledge died mere months from each other. As part of his presidential duty, Harry S. Truman must choose the next Supreme Court justices to fill the vacant seats. In a controversial move, President Truman appointed 2 liberal justices to the court, which would later vote to overturn the convictions of the Hollywood 10, under the argument that the 1-year prison sentence for the Hollywood 10 was not only excessive but downright unconstitutional. The move was applauded by many liberals and progressives, but heavily condemned by conservatives and the House Un-American Activities Committee. 1950. Madman MacArthur. On April 3, 1950, the PLA and the Republic of China signed an armistice after the former successfully captured the island of Hainan. The Republic's government was moved to Formosa, or Taiwan, which quickly found itself under American protection and economic support. With American support, the island was quickly fortified in the anticipation of a communist invasion. Shortly afterwards, the Democratic People's Republic of Korea, under the leadership of Kim Il-sung, launched a surprise invasion against the Republic of Korea to the south. DPRK forces stormed across the South Korean front as if it were made of glass, quickly capturing the Republic's capital of Seoul. The United States immediately called for international condemnation of the invasion and sent thousands of volunteers and weapons to the Republic to stave off the communist forces. By July of 1950, the Republic had pushed the DPRK's forces back across the border, and by August they were fast approaching Pyongyang. The city fell on August 13th. 2 days later, the Kuomintang remnants in Taiwan offered to assist in the war effort. President Truman welcomed all the help he could get, never once considering how the newly proclaimed PRC would react. Reality set in on the 19th as PLA forces crossed the Yalu River and invaded Korea. By November, Pyongyang was back under communist control and the front lines looked nearly identical to what they were when the war began. In order to avoid blame, venerated World War II General Douglas MacArthur was blamed by Truman for the Chinese intervention in Korea. In response, General MacArthur proposed an arguably insane plan that involved using nuclear weapons in Chinese Manchuria in order to force their withdrawal from the war. President Truman was infuriated with MacArthur's continued disobedience and demanded that the general respect the chain of command and fall in place. The divide between the president and his military commanders was seemingly becoming wider by the day.